Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today as we continue with our Unlock the Value month for our Improving Talks initiative. With this series, Improving top IT experts have been sharing how to maximize your tech investments and explore industry-specific solutions that drive real business impact. And today will be no different. My name is Armando Lopez, and I am very happy to welcome you. I am also very honored to introduce our host for this session. Mark Soul is a technologist specializing in distributed systems with a particular focus on real-time data. He's proud to be a principal consulting at Improving for over 4 years, where he has led many successful projects. Mark is a Minnesota native and still lives there with his daughter. They have recently bought their first house. Congratulations on that. Outside of work, you can expect to find him with a Nintendo controller in his hands. In today's discussion, aptly titled How a Global Healthcare Manufacturer Transformed Production Lines, Mark will share candid insights from his journey, including technical best practices, critical decision points, system architecture, and the lessons learned from this transformation. Please remember, you can use our Q&A feature at any time during his presentation, and I will make sure that he answers the questions live. And now, I leave you with Mark Soul. The microphone is yours, my friend.
Hello. Thanks, Armando. All right, well, let's get into it. As Armando said, we're going to talk about how a global healthcare manufacturer transformed production lines with real-time IoT insights. And as Armando mentioned, this is a part of our Unlock the Value series. Improving partnered with Confluent to unlock the value for a global healthcare manufacturer known as Medtronic. But first, about me. So my name is Mark Soul. I'm a principal consultant here at Improving. I've been in the company for more than 4 years. I graduated from University of Minnesota, Twin Cities in 2013. Minnesota born and raised, I've been here all my life. And computer nerd born and raised. I've been a computer nerd all my life and video game nerd, as Armando mentioned. If you'd like to reach out, please do so on LinkedIn. The QR code for LinkedIn is there, or the link is there. Or if you want, you can just email me at marksoul@improving.com. Well, with that, let's get into it. So Medtronic had some business problems. And the thing is that they are manufacturing medical devices. And manufacturing, as you might know, is actually really complex. And, the more I learn about it, the more interesting it becomes. Because, Medtronic has served over, according to their website, over 78 million people over the course of their company. And they create devices that treat more than 70 health conditions. And they have 95,000 employees across 350 sites all over the world. This is massive scale. This is a lot of devices and a lot of work that has to go in to manufacturing these devices. And not only that, but there's a large variety of devices that can treat a huge variety of conditions: diabetes, neuromodulation, cardiovascular issues, and then also they manufacture devices for performing surgeries. That's just scratching the surface of the things that they do. The thing is, if you have a medical condition, Medtronic has a device for it. But in manufacturing these devices, they've had several problems. In doing so, first and foremost is the fact that they relied on a lot of manual and paper-based processes. So how it would work is that people on site at various manufacturing locations on site would collect data, write it down on clipboards, put it in spreadsheets, physically on the site, and they would sort of collect all those reports at the end of the week and then act on whatever information they get from that. Well, this is manual and open to human error. Somebody writes a 5 instead of a 4, someone miscounts something, someone messed up their Excel macro. So it was slow and it's error prone. In addition, they also suffered from limited visibility and data silos because every site would have their own people collecting these reports. You didn't have a view of the entire enterprise. So production data is scattered across disconnected systems, which hindered comprehensive real-time operational visibility. And then aggregating these things was also really efficient across multiple production lines. That really impeded their ability to respond to global analysis and global optimization. But what's more is that they would have high scrap rates. Medical devices are very complex and require a high level of quality. And so any issues are going to result in scrap, right? And the problem is that quality defects were often identified way too late in the production process, like maybe not until the end of the week at the soonest. And this is leading to wasted materials and resources. And also, their quality control wasn't data-driven. That was just causing persistent inefficiencies all across the enterprise. Then they were also being reactive to their maintenance issues, which in turn led to high downtime because they're not able to proactively identify issues with equipment. The kind of equipment that's used to manufacture these devices are very complex, very expensive, and have a certain life cycle for maintenance. Well, who knows what that life cycle is for one particular machine in one particular factory? Maybe some random person who happens to be on the factory floor might know. But that's not exactly scalable. So they had an inability to proactively identify issues with this equipment, and that led to way more downtime than they would have expected. And then when it came to addressing these issues, they had to rely on historical data and old data because they were like collecting this data manually and then creating reports and then trying to act on those reports. This really limited their ability to be predictive and limited their strategic foresight. And finally, production management was inefficient. They had difficulty managing workloads and production lines, and they weren't able to optimize in real time. They would have bottlenecks that would appear and disappear and would maybe even go unnoticed for a substantial amount of time. This affected their throughput and the quality of their products. And then they weren't able to do any of this in real time. So without that real time, without getting that data in real time, they're not able to address issues, and this caused further delays. And then when they were intaking this data, they were doing it in batch reporting style. So this limited their ability to do it in a timely fashion. So this is what Medtronic was facing when they started to work with Improving and Confluent. So how did we solve this? Well, our approach essentially has 3 pillars. The first pillar was to capture real-time data. And so we would capture data directly from IoT devices and other sensors and systems on the factory floor. So MES systems or manufacturing execution systems or MQTT brokers and systems. Once we capture that, then we move on to our second pillar, which is to implement real-time data pipelines. So we would capture all this data in real time, and then we would stream it into Kafka, where then we would be able to do automated reporting, analytics, and then build applications to take actions on those insights. And so we use Kafka Streams, the Kafka Streams applications written in Java, we'd be able to embed business logic into these real-time streams. And the third pillar is scalability and standardization. Yeah, it's great that we can intake all this data, but how do we scale with the number of sites that Medtronic has? So what we do is we decided to build on Confluent Cloud. That way we would be able to reliably count on the capabilities there and its ability to scale as we add new manufacturing locations to the system. But it's not enough, right? You also need to standardize because there's 350 sites. They might not all be manufacturing sites, but they have a lot of sites, all right? And not all those sites are collecting and reporting data the same way. So we need to standardize that across the entire enterprise. So what does that look like when we actually went on to, and the technologies mentioned, Kafka, Java, Power BI, and MQTT. Okay, what does this look like in nuts and bolts, right? When we actually get down to it, what does the solution look like? Well, starting from the left, we have all of our systems that are on the production lines, right? IoT devices, sensors, MES systems. We then intake that into Kafka using Kafka Connect and specifically MQTT connectors. The Kafka Connect has connectors that could actually pull in MQTT data into Kafka. And then in Confluent Cloud, we could craft streams of data for different domains and different purposes. So we could take this data that we're getting from the factory floor with Kafka Connect, take it in, change it, combine it, transform it, enrich it, into as many different streams that we might need for various business purposes. And then once we have that, right, then we could use Kafka Connect again to then send that data back out to various downstream systems, like for analytics and reporting, like Power BI or data warehouses. In addition, we could even build streaming applications with Kafka Streams to use that data for our business applications directly and in real time. So with this architecture, we can turn manual batch-based systems or processes into automated real-time processes where applications and reporting systems can actually act on these things in real time as they happen. And so that's nice. But what are the benefits if we were to list them out and really nail them down? What are the benefits of doing this? Well, the first one is improved data visibility, because we're pulling all this data in from the different sites. We're able to do it in real time. So not only are we able to visualize this data, but we're able to see it as it comes in real time, which is nice. That allows us to make better decisions and quicker decisions. Not like we don't have to make a decision a week after we've collected the data. We can make a decision right away. This led also to enhanced operational efficiency, because we're automatically collecting this data. We're not having to rely on people on the factory floor creating reports in Excel. It's all automatic. It's streamlined, physically less people that just need to do the work. And faster. Time is money, right? Speaking of time is money, we are saving money with this system, right? Because we're not doing all this manual data entry. So it's automatic and it's correct. And this data then can in turn lead to insights for further cost savings by helping reduce equipment downtime and optimize production lines. Speaking of which, optimizing production lines, right?
Mark,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I'm going to read a question that we got from the audience. It says, I thought MQTT was supposed to be used for lightweight messaging, like sensor, controllers, etc. Yet you're using a heavyweight solution for this like Kafka, which isn't really MQTT, right? So why were the two mixed in this case? What am I missing?
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I probably should have clarified this a little more. Sorry about that. So we're not using Kafka to do the lightweight messaging between the IoT systems. We're using the MQTT connector to pull all the data that these systems are producing and communicating with each other into Kafka. So it's happening separate from whatever the IoT systems are doing.
Thank you, Mark. No more questions.
Okay. Yeah, if that didn't answer it, please just follow up. Okay, so what I was saying, optimize production throughput. Yes. So with this better visibility, right? And the fact that we're able to in real time pull it into our reporting systems, this would help us identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, because a lot of these, it's kind of like traffic, right? Sometimes somebody slams in their brake and all the people behind them slow down, but then that slowdown sort of persists for a while as more cars are coming in, because cars behind them have to slow down and behind them have to slow down. It could take a while for those bottlenecks in traffic to resolve itself. In manufacturing, it's kind of similar. The machine goes down either temporarily or for some extended period of time, or someone makes a mistake or something else happens. Well, this is going to cause backups and bottlenecks that continue to persist on. You might not even know about those bottlenecks or Medtronic might not even know about those bottlenecks until maybe at the end of the week when they've compiled the reports. That means that they had maybe hours or days or even weeks of bottlenecks just kind of slowing down their production, and they didn't know. Well, by pulling all this data in real time and analyzing it in real time, they're able to see these things, and then they're able to then implement solutions for those bottlenecks. Speaking of being proactive, these machines require maintenance. Just as important as using machines is maintaining them, right? Well, it was hard for them to do that before because they just didn't really have that visibility or the ability to analyze that data easily and globally. Well, by using real-time streaming, they're able to do that analytics in real time and then detect when a machine requires maintenance or is maybe showing signs of requiring maintenance, and then they could implement proactive resolution to those issues. This is just heading off potential future downtime, which then in turn, of course, lowers costs. And then finally, scalability. So using batch-based systems or like manual systems, it's going to be hard to scale for something of this size because like people with clipboards and Excel is not exactly a scalable solution, right? But this architecture can scale as we add new sites, thanks to Confluent Cloud and its impressive scaling capabilities. That means that as we expand the solution, we're able to do so without performance loss or extensive rework. So there are a lot of benefits that we're able to milk out of this, right? But, you know, it wasn't all roses and rainbows and sunshine. There were some lessons we had to learn along the way. First being that, that we just had to learn to be patient in our transformation. You know, we're essentially moving operational technology into information technology. To do that, there had to be just a lot of different skill sets working together to make this solution happen. And so trying to move too fast and rolling out a solution was going to be difficult because you just need everyone to be able to work together and to understand and be able to deliver a solution. And so we had to learn to be patient, gradually introduce digital practices rather than abruptly. So that way, everyone on the team can adopt these things smoothly. And we could fit and build on top of their existing capabilities and culture. So we started small and then we expanded. You know, we started with one site and then we added sites as a solution became more mature. Second is the importance of designing for scale. This is a particularly sharp pain point here, designing for scale, because the thing is that what you want to do is you want to start small, but even though you're starting small, you still need to plan your design for scalability. You need to design for scale. If you don't do that, then what happens is that as you expand the solution, you're going to encounter performance degradation as new lines and sites are added. In addition, let's talk about standardization. Standardization has probably been a part of manufacturing since probably before Henry Ford's time, but this lesson, it persists even as we move from operational technology to information technology. Indeed, standardization is just as important in information technology as it is in manufacturing and many other fields of human endeavor. So what you need to do is you need to establish standard data models, naming conventions, and integration practices. So that way you can efficiently aggregate data across multiple locations and systems, because different locations may be reporting things differently, or even small things like just using different names for the same thing. So as you're rolling this out, you have to think about what are your topic names going to be? What are your schema names going to be? How are you going to name? Do you have a system for naming them? And do you have a standard way to name certain data points? Because it's very important to do that well. And then effective use of partnerships. So we worked with Confluent on this, but also Medtronic was working with some other companies like Critical Manufacturing and Ignition. It's important that we leverage the capabilities of our partners. Because the thing is that data streaming is not Medtronic's core competency. Their core competency is manufacturing medical devices. Well, then they need partners to help them with real-time data streaming. Confluent brought Confluent Cloud to the table, which is able to scale to the level that Medtronic needs. And lastly, and this is sort of the top of the stack, the most important thing to take out of all of this, the ability to be predictive capabilities, so important, right? We need real-time data to enable predictive maintenance. We can't do predictive maintenance very well with data that we've gathered manually or via batch or via some other system. It has to be real-time or near real-time. And real-time streaming enables analytics, significantly reduces downtime, and boosts operational efficiency. It's a pretty interesting project. I mean, there's the scale is impressive. The things that we had to do to make this happen is really impressive. And the lessons learned, I think, are very relevant to all forms of manufacturing and maybe even other types of fields. So if you go to the next slide, there's a quote. This is actually more of a paraphrasing of just the general sentiment from my various colleagues that worked on this project. And I'll read the quote to you is, "This has a profound impact in shaping their ability to optimize production of life-changing and life-saving medical devices." Think about it. Medtronic has served 78 million customers over their lifetime. If we can help them produce medical devices even a couple percentage points faster, or even a couple cents cheaper, that is going to have a huge impact on the number of people that can access those devices. And that's why it's important that we use all the tools at our disposal to milk as much performance out of these manufacturing lines as we can, so that those people can get those devices. Well, and with that, here's our key slide. If you want to reach out to Improving, please scan that QR code or go to that link. Any questions, Armando?
Yeah, such a great and interesting project, Mark. Thank you for sharing this with everyone. We got another couple of questions through Teams. The first one says, what were some of the biggest considerations or challenges you faced when scaling this solution from a pilot to multiple production lines or facilities?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is making sure that you design for scale. So what would happen is that we would add a new site, and we'd have some performance degradation because we didn't design a particular database table to be able to handle more than one site. So the volume of data that was coming into that table, when it was one site, was fine, performed just fine. We'd be able to do queries, they were fast. But then as we added like multiple sites, then we were streaming so much data into that table, for example, that we'd have to denormalize the data or partition the data. And we just weren't prepared for that because we hadn't designed certain components to be able to scale. So designing for scale, even if you're starting small, was one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you, Mark. Before I read you the next question, I want to encourage our audience. If someone here has another one that he wants or she wants to ask Mark, please use the Q&A feature. We have time. But the other one we got through Teams, it says, Mark, what additional opportunities do you see for using IoT and real-time streaming in other parts of these manufacturing or business processes going forward?
Yeah. So there are two parts to this one. Okay, that I would think is relevant here, but they're kind of the same thing. The two things are shift left and edge computing. So what do I mean by shift left? Well, can we go back to the slide that showed the architecture real quick? Yeah, thanks. So by shift left, what I mean is, you see how I have this diagram arranged from left to right? Well, it's possible that we can move some of the functionality on the right side further left. And so how you would do that in this setting is with edge computing. Confluent has actually written some articles on this using edge computing in Kafka for manufacturing. And what you would do is you could have like two levels of Kafka clusters. One Kafka cluster like we have here is central for like kind of more like longer term planning and analytics. But then you could have a Kafka cluster at every site, for example. And that Kafka cluster can then, a feature of Kafka is something called MQTT proxy, where now Kafka applications can actually integrate and participate with MQTT brokers. And so what you could do is if you had some use cases that required ultra low latency, you could spin up this edge computing at each site with a Kafka cluster, with applications running against that Kafka cluster to perform that functionality on the site level. And then you could then turn around and stream all that same data back centrally to Kafka Cloud for long-term and global planning and analytics. This is where I would see something like this going.
Awesome. Mark, last one I have from Teams. Is this a good use case for edge computing? Thoughts?
Oh, hey, I just talked about that. Yeah, so I think this is a good use case for edge computing. Now, I actually don't know enough about manufacturing personally to know like what particular bits of functionality are really low latency. Like I don't know, for example, what things, what kind of data is flowing around MQTT broker, for example, and what things, like IoT devices are communicating with each other. But if you do have use cases like that, right? Having a Kafka cluster just sitting at that edge, kind of like edge, like CDNs will have edge locations, right? You could have Kafka clusters as edge locations integrated with MQTT proxy, so that way those Kafka applications can interact with IoT devices. And that could be really good. That could be a really, really good way to implement super low latency functionality.
Awesome, Mark. You've answered all of our audience questions. Before we thank everyone, do you want to share any final remarks from this presentation?
Yeah. My overall impression after having worked on this and putting this together and sort of reflecting on my experience with this project is that manufacturing is really quite interesting. Like there are just so many little problems that need to be solved and big problems that need to be solved, frankly, but also a lot of little problems because there's just so much going on. There's so many different things that need to be built, so many different things that need to be shipped around, so many different things that need to be combined, and so many different ways to do it, so many different kinds of machines and skill sets involved. And so I think it's a really rich area for information technology and particularly data streaming.
Well, Mark, that's it for today. Thank you to our great audience for joining us today, but especially Mark Soul for showing us and walking us through his experience with this leading global healthcare technology manufacturer. It was super awesome. And coming up next week on April 23rd, we will continue this series with the webinar Energy Sector Innovation, Seamless Migration to SAP Analytics Cloud with Improving XI Planning Packages with our friend Rodrigo Sanicelli. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, Mark, for your time.